let me welcome everyone once again to our monthly PropFundrs community webinar. Absolutely delighted with the people who have joined live today. Absolutely pleasure to have everyone spending a little bit of their Wednesday afternoon with us here. And of course, many people choose to watch the recording. And that's one of the benefits of technology, which we were just discussing before we went live. Um, Us ones who are a little bit older than others struggle a little bit with technology. So Sam and myself being the old ones, Dan and Laura being very young, they no problem with technology. It's easy for them.
That's terrible putting Laura in the same bracket as me.
Both
Yeah.
young, both very young. So let me
She's about
first
half
of
my
all
age.
let me first of all say welcome everyone to this. So this will be about 45, 50 minutes or so. And what we do is every month we run this, we do a live. So if you have any questions, please put it into the chat box. Wrong, not the chat box, into the Q&A box, and we will try and put those directly to one of the panelists. What we tend to not do is read out the names because it's a live and then recorded. So just in case you don't want to have your name put out there, we won't mention your name, but we will ask the question. So please feel free to ask any questions if you can. By all means, put comments in, even if it's just a comment. Happy to hear that, which is absolutely great. So my name is David Johnson. I am the CVO, Chief Vision Officer of PropFundrs. I'll say a little bit more about us and who we are just in a minute. But let's get straight to our guest today. Absolutely delighted. Three people I've known for many, many years, but from all different regions of UK and Ireland. Unfortunately, the big disclaimer at the start is my Welsh guest, unfortunately, has been unable to make it. So if there does happen to be anybody who is a property expert from Wales and you're in the audience, well, if you feel you want to jump up and represent the wonderful nation of Wales and you can add some value, then fire that into the chat to me privately and I'll see if I can bring you up. But in the absence of that, who I have is Dan from Scotland, Laura from Northern Ireland, and she'll also talk a bit about the Republic of Ireland, sort of a whole island economy in terms of property, and also Mr. Sam Lowni from England. So just go from the top down, just say a minute each of intro, what you do in property. If you could please, Dan, off with you.
Hi guys, I'm Dan Taylor, and we're from Taylor Capital. And what we do and what we have done for the last 35 years is we buy businesses on their underlying commercial real estate, and we usually do a roll up. What's a roll up? It's really buying small businesses and turning, herding them together like sheep and turning them into a group, a medium-sized business. And then we split the real estate from the business, sell the business, hopefully hold the real estate. We're on our third roll up just now, which is in the care space, and pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Dan. Over to Laura, who's probably not too far from me geographically at the minute.
Just a couple of miles down the road, David. Thanks very much for having me on this afternoon. My name is Laura Cairns. I'm a director at Cairns and Dining Sales and Lettings, and also do a bit of property sourcing as well. Been in the property world for about 20 years now. Yeah, all aspects from mostly residential, private residential.
Brilliant, fantastic. And Sam from representing England.
So yeah, I've been in property since 2001, started out as an estate agent. Since then, I've become an investor developer, landlord, own properties in North and East London, Kent, the West Midlands, and the Northeast. And I've also been a founding member of a lending business. We did development finance across the country, ticket sizes between 3 and 30 million. And then I stepped down from my position there as head of origination, having grown the team from 3 people up to 15. And I decided to set up a finance brokerage where we help SME property investors and developers with all of their funding requirements, from bridging, commercial development through to HMOs, buy-to-lets, service accommodations, social housing, etc.
Brilliant. And you also have your own podcast.
Yes.
You
So you
mentioned
might see in the screen behind me. So yes, I've got a podcast called Property People. It's about sharing ideas, experiences, problems, and solutions from property professionals across the industry.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. That's a good intro from everyone. And we've dispensed with a lot of the other things we normally do on the monthly webinar, just in terms of market updates, things like that. Dispensed with it all, so that we'll quite quickly be able to get straight into picking the brains of these property experts on the screen. Now, just for any of the new ones, we do always like just to explain a little bit about PropFundrs. So just for a couple of minutes, PropFundrs, our mission statement is very clear. What gets us out of bed in the morning, what motivates the team, is to empower SME property developers to build more homes by disrupting the alternative funding market. So that's really what we're about. And I've been fortunate to be involved in property for about 24 years now. I ran a regulated equity property crowdfunding platform for a while. And early this year, we pivoted into PropFundrs. And really, we do a lot of work directly with developers and landlords looking for funding, but also helping investors match into deals. So it's been really good fun. I was on a couple of site visits there a few weeks ago, between Cambridge and Leicester and back into London again. So love what I do, love the concept of helping developers, helping investors, and when good people get together, good things tend to happen. So here's just some examples of successful projects that we have done and how we've helped people. This was a developer who had a project down in Guildford. The senior lender changed their terms at the very last minute. They were 75k short. I put it out to a couple of high net worth individuals who had been properly designated as high net worth in terms of the FCA designation. And one of them absolutely loved the idea, jumped in, and became a second charge private loan to this project. Another project that we did that actually Saam helped us with. This was a mixed-use property down in Brighton, and with Sam's help, we successfully went to Glenhawk, the bridging company, and we put a bridge on this property for 760,000 odd. And that was another thing we did with a client. And then we've also taken some developers to crowdfunding. Obviously, that's a particular passion of mine. And we actually took this builder, 5 bungalows near Nottingham, and we raised 340,000 via mainly retail investors. This was equity into the project. So that's just 3 simple examples of what we've done in PropFundrs, and I'll leave my contact details at the end. Also have a podcast, which I've really enjoyed doing. I think we're up now to about 12 episodes. So you can see there, some of them have had almost 500 views, which is from a standing start a few months ago. I'm very pleased with that. I'm still chasing Dan to get him on at some point, but as you'll hear, he's usually jetting around the world, sunning himself, playing golf, doing his big property deals. So our diaries haven't quite merged yet, but they definitely will. They definitely will merge. And you can see just the variety of what we have on. Now, double promo for Laura today. Not only is she on as a guest for Northern Ireland, but it just so happens this week is the launch of her podcast, which we actually filmed, Laura, it must be 2 months ago, maybe even more.
Maybe more, yeah.
Yeah. So we flew our sort of podcast guy over to Northern Ireland. We filmed a number of them, and there's a wee snippet of Laura and I sitting in our wee studio over in Belfast. So this one's just live as of yesterday. So you can go on to YouTube, Spotify, at the Property Funding Podcast, and you'll be able to hear more about Laura and her property journey. Turned into a bit of a tongue twister there. So here we go. Before we get in now, and the Laura, Sam, and Dan don't know what this is, so I can see the look of confusion on their faces. But just by way of getting in a bit more about them, we've all heard a question of sport. Well, this is a question of property. So you're going to give me a number. I've just realized I don't have the questions right in front of me. That's okay. I'll remember them off the top of my head. So each pick a number, and then there's a question behind the number. And then you're going to just very quickly, in the space of like 2 sentences, answer the question. So I suppose we'll go, Laura, I'll let you choose first. You can just pick a number.
Number 3.
Number 3. Okay, so if you could, maybe you already have one, but the absolute dream holiday home, which country would it be and what type of property?
Probably the south of France, something overlooking the beach. It's
Okay.
maybe is quite obvious then as I picked the one that looks out onto the beach.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, Sam.
Number one, please.
Okay. Some people think there's mystery around property. So, is there any things that anything to do with property people think are mystery that you could debunk or that you've found in your journey, you've managed to debunk it?
Um, some people try to tell people that you can be an overnight success and you can make lots of money out of property and it's super easy. You can do it. You can be financially free in 12 months and leave your job and all that sort of thing. That's not been my experience, and I'm not sure of many other people that have done the same. But it is a marathon, not a sprint. So if you do it well over a long period of time, it can be incredibly fruitful.
Love it. Great, great answer. Dan?
I'll take number 6.
Okay. So
Looks like my house at Christmas.
I was about to say, but it wouldn't surprise me. Um, so the question behind this one is I know you're very much a family man, so you can enjoy Christmas in any property in the world with your family. Where would it be?
Sandy Lane, Barbados.
Cool, 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 cool. You're going to tell me you've got a property there and that's where you're going this year, is it?
No, been there quite a few times. Love it. But I don't have a property there. I just come back from San Diego actually, and I tell you what, that is such a cool place. Really chilled out vibe. 40 minutes from one end to the other. Food's amazing. They're all health conscious, and it's this is like nearly the end of November, and it's still sunny. It kind of reminds me of Marbella, which we kind of live half the year there. But yeah, San Diego, Barbados, love it all.
Sounds good. Okay, back round to Laura then.
Number 4.
Number 4. Okay. In terms of green, sustainable, and property, anything you think that is like a must when you're looking at doing, say, a property development, or I suppose even a refurb of a buy-to-let, what's the most important green thing you can do for property?
I suppose at the moment, especially with all the new regulations maybe coming into effect, in the residential rental area, I suppose just upgrading anything so that it becomes towards the sea level. Maybe insulating the walls, attic insulation. But I think for the future, it's going to be more solar panels and solar panels and things down that line.
Yep. Okay. Now I'm going to steer this last 2. Okay. And you'll find out in a minute why. Sam, you really want to pick number 5, don't you?
I had my eye on it. Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Technology. And I know you've done a bit of development stuff in the past. Anything that you see from a technology point of view, either in build, construction, or even just running a property business, that's going to make a big impact going forward?
In the property industry or running a property business, I mean,
either or. Just
yeah. So technology has got to be AI, and I'm in the finance space. So what I'm noticing more and more are systems and processes being automated, put into digital workflows, and really importantly, decisions being made from an underwriting perspective, whether it be the value of a property or whether the deal is even worth doing. And those algorithms, that machine learning is already happening at a pretty rapid pace. So there will be a time where, in the same way that I think scoring systems already exist for certain credit files for mortgage loans for residential, you're going to see that in the more specialist space, which will only speed up turnaround times. So yeah, AI, machine learning, and hopefully getting rid of a bunch of underwriters that are very subjective.
Okay, sounds good. And number 2 actually was picked by Brenda, and it's a commercial premises. And we have a commercial expert in Mr. Dan Taylor on with us. So why do you think, Dan, that so many people are nervous or apprehensive about getting into commercial property?
I think it's preconceived ideas that it's significantly harder than residential. And just like Sam says, nothing's an overnight success. And if you learn the fundamentals, you're kind of be quite surprised quite quickly that it's achievable. There's massive opportunities in commercial right now, office space, obviously that market's changed massively, and it's still not at the bottom yet. There's plenty of room to go. But reprofiling office space into obviously everyone's go-to is residential, but secondly, multiple occupancy in office space, co-working, that kind of thing, obviously works a treat as well. But also there's a massive opportunity in retail. And that opportunity is repurposing, reprofile, making big spaces, smaller spaces, and chunking them up. So huge opportunities elsewhere. What I specifically, we've done shops and uppers, that kind of thing, but my real passion is buying businesses and commercial real estate. And we'll explain why in a little while.
Yep.
One other thing, actually, see
Yeah,
what Sam said there is really relevant. AI using system software processes to really speed up things, and it's something we come across called data rails. It basically brings all your spreadsheet stuff together into templates, but live templates. So your fractional, hopefully, if you've got a fractional CFO, they can update that, and everything's live on a trailing 12-month basis on this month's performance, and then projected going forward. So data rails is really shaking up the old Excel spreadsheet market.
I've seen that advertised, actually. I've been quite curious about it because I do a lot of spreadsheety stuff. And I just always skim over it because I thought it was another advert, but it caught my attention. But I shall now, with that recommendation, have a look into it.
Yeah, see that's the joys of these sort of live Zoom sessions. Even the panelists learn when they come on to the PropFundrs community webinar. I love it. Okay, so that was just a bit of sort of setting the scene for attendees, know a little bit more about the panelists. So we're going to spend the next sort of 20 minutes or so deep diving into the budget, and then we'll pivot into more sort of the current economic factors around property, looking ahead to 2025. So that just sort of sets the scene. Autumn budget, so much hype. I mean, again, whether it's just social media and the way our world exists now, there just seemed to be so much speculation, so much hype, and then it came and went. And yeah, there were some changes, but probably not to the level everyone was expecting. But in terms of the key takeaways, I'm going to drop in a link probably into the chat here for a blog that we did. But for me, there was the kind of the main takeaways, if you like, from the autumn budget: increased spotlight on affordable social housing, abolition of the right to buy scheme, potential changes to property taxes, and the fact that it's potential changes is interesting. We might get into that a little bit. Private rental market reforms, sustainability and green build initiatives, and then this spotlight on wealth inequality. So I've kind of got a bit of an image for each one of these. So we'll just run through them, and really just we're looking at some sort of key highlights around this. Again, if anyone's got questions, please file them into the Q&A, and we'll put them to the panelists. Or again, if you want to make a comment, I can see from the good number of attendees here, there's a lot of professionals sort of on here listing as an attendee. I know you've got a take on things. Stick your comments in, and we'll happily add those into the mix. So there's no sort of sense to this. Whatever you just jump in as just feel. And the first one is just this spotlight on sort of the tax changes. I suppose the biggest one is that the capital gains tax didn't change as was expected. I mean, did all three panelists think the capital gains tax was going to greatly increase based on speculation, or did you all think that was just a bit of hype?
I didn't buy that one. I thought that if it increases, it'll increase a little bit, but it wouldn't go up to the crazy numbers that they were talking. That would just be suicide.
Yeah, I totally agree. I didn't think that it was going to increase the way that they said it did.
Okay, and that's just you're saying, both of you are saying there that it was suicide, as in Sam, the impact it would have on the market would just be so detrimental, it just make no sense.
Yeah, and I think it's very strategic. I've noticed a few little PR plays in the same vein that Tony Blair and Alistair Campbell did in '97. I think that they leaked some of this stuff so that whatever came out in the end didn't seem so bad compared to some of the stuff that was being projected out into the public. So, I just didn't buy it.
Yeah,
Dan? Yeah, I think there would have been a mass exodus, of landlords, especially from the market, if they had done that, and especially if they had done it, quite soon. I mean, stamp duty was changed the next day, so that that was predicted, and we seen a lot of sales being pushed through before the budget to try and accommodate for that in case it did happen, because it had been talked about.
I was speaking to wealthy homeowners, like business people that have got big properties and they've got second homes and third homes, and they were already thinking about selling stuff before any of those tax changes because of that. Now they're not going to do anything, but if that did happen, it would have flooded the market, I think, and that would have been wouldn't have been good for anybody.
Yeah. Okay. Dan, you want to come in there?
Yeah, from my point of view, where I kind of live, commercial, business buying, commercial real estate, that kind of thing. And I specifically, I'm now doing a kind of third role in the care space, so care homes. Now the budget's changed quite a bit for them, significantly actually, which makes a massive opportunity. So really, kind of three key areas for them. The massive one, the elephant in the room, which is absolutely making business values plummet, is the staff costs, employee costs. And somebody on 37.5 hours at minimum wage, the extra cost to the business is £2,566.73. Now that is absolutely nuts, because in a care home, you might have 100, 200 people. So times 2,500, times 6 times EBITDA. It's just insane. So that was kind of big thing number one. Big thing number two is when you're selling your business, obviously there's a lot of people at that age where they want to sell, they want to create that capital event and crystallize their wealth that's locked in, they're trapped in their business. Obviously BADR, or capital gains tax, in this kind of sector, you've got entrepreneurs relief, now called business asset disposal relief, and your first £1 million used to be 10 million, then they cut it down to $1 million a few years ago, and you're at 10%, but they're moving that up to 14% April 25, 18% April 26. Now that's insane. So they're hitting you with this massive $2,500 per employee more, and that's at minimum wage. So obviously it's going to be significantly more than that. Then you've got this capital gains tax, or BADR kind of left relief. And then the biggest thing, not the biggest thing, but another big thing, another whack on the head, like a Thor's hammer coming slapping you on the head, is the pensions that everyone's been putting money into. This is a very tax efficient vehicle, SIPs, SASs, whatever. You're saving 25% going in, which is happy days. They've just put a 40% inheritance tax slap on pensions. Now, pensions are sacred because you've got to, make the money, pay your tax to put them into the pension to start with. And now, for everybody's got £1 million in their pension, they're going to steal £400,000. It's absolute outright theft. It's not. But hey ho, no point worrying about what you can't change. You just got to think about what is there and what's the opportunity with that. And there's massive opportunity right now.
Yeah. Who was it made the famous statement, two things in life? Was it Mark Twain? Two things in life, certain death and taxes?
Absolutely. But you got to live with that and just deal with it. And so loving tax, learning to love the tax game is absolutely instrumental for every entrepreneur going forward. And there's so many tax strategies where if you just start to understand them, you don't have to be a tax expert. You don't have to give advice. But what you need to do is be like the conductor of the orchestra and understand their impacts, these tax strategies, how you kind of strategy stack, as I call it, and then bring in a specialist to actually implement, put a PI cover on the line.
That's actually that's a really good point, Dan. Actually, before we jump on to the next one, then that for professional property people, they've got to see tax as just something that's there that has to then be, if you like, used to their advantage or understand it well enough to make sure you're maximizing the legal breaks you can get. And it's a really interesting point. Some people just run away from it. Oh no, this is going to happen, I'm going to get out of property. Whereas what you're saying, the exact opposite, embrace it, understand it, and see where the opportunities may come in a proper tax strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody right now on high rate tax that owns a small business can actually sell their business to their own holding company and go from 45% tax down to 10% tax. And then subsequently down the road, sell it from their holding company, apply for SSE, substantial shareholder relief, and pay no tax. So no matter what's coming at you, it's about seeing the opportunity within the turmoil.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, brilliant, fantastic. Okay, rental reforms, Laura, I'll maybe go to you first because we actually first met, as we were saying in the podcast. I think we talked about maybe 2008, 2009, when you were
Yeah.
just starting out your journey in a local rental company.
Yeah.
And we gave some of our buy-to-lets over. There was a new company starting near sort of the nearest sort of town to us, and I remember walking in, and Laura was behind the desk, and became our manager of some of our rental properties, and we've obviously stayed
Many
in
moons
touch ever
ago.
since. Exactly, exactly. So in terms of rental reforms then, or things that happened in the budget around rentals, any comment or observations?
Yeah, obviously Northern Ireland is a bit of a different market, but it usually takes a wee while for it to kind of filter through and come through the legislation then down in Northern Ireland. But even at the minute, I think especially, the no tenant evictions and things like that doesn't really, it's not the same in Northern Ireland as what it would be in England. But they are definitely becoming more and more stringent. Even bringing in, like, next week, we have the new section, regulations 8, section 8 regulations, and for the smoke alarms, and we're kind of rushing at the minute to try and get every single private tenancy all fitted with these new smoke alarm systems before the 2nd of December. And it's just sometimes, we're the ones that are going to be responsible for it, but the landlords don't want to do the work. And it's about who, there's a lot of pressure on, I think, everybody, because it came in May. They were given so many months to do, and now we're like the last few people who just kind of, I suppose, don't understand that these works need done, regardless of what type of house it is, or if you already have 1 or 2 smoke alarms in the property. So that's just one thing. Another thing is the length of, the amount of kind of leeway the tenants have now. If they're in a house for more than a year, we automatically have to give them 8 weeks rather than the original 1 month notice, which puts a lot of pressure on landlords, especially whenever it comes to selling or if they're not paying their rent. There's a lot of people still caught up in the accidental landlords, here, especially from the whole 2008 recession, where a lot of people had to rent their houses because they weren't able to sell them because it's been in negative equity for so long. And they're only starting to see the light of day now in terms of the equity on their properties. So they've been paying a lot of money out. And, if a tenant hasn't been paying their rent, it has been putting landlords under a lot of pressure. And I think the more regulations that they're going to put landlords under, the less rental properties that there are going to be. I think we're seeing that in Dublin. There was a lot of the regulations that were in Dublin and the south of Ireland that Labour are now trying to implement across the UK. And it did see a mass exodus of private renters or private properties in Dublin, which caused phenomenal rental increases because there were such little properties left. And Labour, I think, are now trying to do the same thing as what the previous Irish government had done. And you can kind of just see that the trends are going to follow. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. Actually, before we go over to Sam in terms of maybe finger on the pulse in England and London, etc. But I can remember, Laura, some of the newspaper articles about what's happened in Dublin a few years ago, and literally like hundreds of people queued down the street to get a viewing of a single property in Dublin. I mean, it was just insane what happened there for a few years because the private landlords just went, right, if you don't want us to be involved here, you make it impossible for us, we'll just leave. And it was just crazy.
It was crazy, yeah. There was queues. There was some houses had 200-300 people strong queues just to try. They were queuing from overnight to try and be at the front of the door just to try and get a house.
Yeah.
Rent.
But it's interesting you're saying that the Labour strategy or some of their policy direction is similar to that, Sam, in terms of what you're aware of, just around your networking events and things like that. Is there a concern of the trajectory of some of the policies and even what did happen in the budget around rental reforms?
Yeah, there is. I think the biggest thing I've noticed is for student landlords, the abolishment of like the fixed term agreement. That is a big problem for them in the student cycle, especially because they've given a waiver of that policy to big, large institutions that are doing PBSAs. So it's just a little bit of a kick in the teeth. So there are quite a few portfolio landlords that have reasonably sized to significant portfolios of just residential stock, terraced houses, etc., that they've been renting to the student market for years, and this is going to completely ruin their business model. And that might be what the government wants, because they want all these properties to go back to homeowners and increase the home ownership and first time buy rates. But that's I think the biggest concern. I think the things like no fault evictions are, it's a little bit of a silly rule in the grand scheme. It'll help a small portion of people, but no landlord that I know is getting rid of tenants for no particular reason, just because they fancy it. So yeah, I think it's the fixed term agreement thing that I think is the biggest one that's going to be a kick in the teeth for anyone that's in the student cycle.
Yeah, okay. Dan, in terms of Scotland, it's different again, really, than England in terms of the rental legislation, as I understand it. Any sort of big changes or big takeaways from that?
Yeah, to be completely honest, I don't really follow it because I buy businesses in real estate. We've got one PBSA scheme. To be honest, we've got planning for 150 units. It's a new build, obviously, right next to the university. And, that's not the big concern. The big concern for that PBSA scheme is we're currently at a yield of 6.75%, and we need to get it down to 6% for it to become commercially viable. It's 21 million GDV, but we can't actually build it right now until rates start coming down that push yields up. Yeah, push yields down, pushes values up. So that's where, my biggest, issue for that development is, and we're just sitting on it just now. But to answer your question, it's not really my sector, to be honest. I kind of stay in my lane. I know my lane.
Yeah, that's okay. No, that's fine. Well, the next one is definitely more in your lane. So we'll start with you first. One thing that the budget has sort of attempted, if you like, to challenge or to highlight is this whole idea of wealth inequality. Obviously, particularly around the flipping of properties and perhaps a targeting of those who are making good money in that sector of the property market. But I know you're someone that kind of studies like wealth creation and the economic factors around that. So, anything you want to comment on just in terms of even this whole concept around wealth inequality?
For me, it's, did you reset the whole desk right now? Take everybody's money away, yeah? And then let everybody start from scratch again. You get the same 3% that's paying all the taxes. Why? Because you're either one of two things, you're a consumer or you're a producer. Yeah. And that's just how it is in society. So trying to fix that is, unless you want to come back to this whole socialist society of, own nothing and be happy. And the majority would love that. But you also get the 3% that will continue to pay all the taxes. And right now, what they're doing in terms of wealth inequality is asking them to leave the country, forcing them to leave the country. There's tens of thousands leaving the country right now. And part of my game plan is to globally diversify in terms of, where I'm tax resident, where my business is resident, and the ownership structure. Because, in this day and age, why do we have to put up with this? Spend all their life paying taxes, contributing, being a worker, and they're doing this. So you vote by your feet, and you can always go somewhere where they treat you better. So for me, it's I love the UK in terms of investing, but it's really about diversifying, certain different things. So you're subject to tax in different jurisdictions. Like, for example, if you can go to St. Lucia, $85,000 buys your tax residency there. You don't have to stay there at all, but you're 0% tax. Now, that means you have to be less than 183 days anywhere else, so they'll claim you as tax resident if you're 184 days. So there's various different ways of doing this. Now, it's not for everybody, obviously, but more and more, the middle class, because the rich have been doing this for centuries. So this is for the middle class that have some assets or have aspirations of creating assets, building assets, creating income. You've got to be looking at a more globalized, becoming a global citizen is really, a great idea for everybody to look at. But in terms of where we are, there's also a 18.5-year real estate cycle kind of coming away from that wealth inequality. And where we are in that 18.5-year real estate, now it has been going on for 200 years. This isn't a new thing. Yeah, it's been going on for 200 years. And there's phases of that real estate cycle. And we're right now in the winner's curse of that real estate cycle. I have a little slide, but obviously we're not doing slides today, but never mind. There's a whole thing. If you want to learn about the real estate cycles, read this book, The Secret Wealth Advantage by Akil Patel. And the one before that was by Phil Anderson. The one before that was by Fred Harrison. And, the data from this, 18.5-year real estate cycle is empirical. And it basically states that every 18.5 years, there's a massive correction, like 2008.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So 2008 the peak was 2006. 2007, we started to see cracks. 2008, the whole thing blew up. RBS, Lehman Brothers, Northern Rock, and X, Y, and Z. Yeah, it wasn't just restricted to them; they were just in the news. But it repeats, and it has done. And as I say, if you want to see the facts, read this and his predecessors, and that's about to repeat. So 2026, 2027, we're going to see a correction. So what does that mean? Peak to trough on a correction, usually 40%. Now that's a big statement because it depends where you are in the UK, but that's an average. Yeah. So if you're in London, it won't be as bad. It'll go down a lot more and it'll recover quicker. So it depends where you are in the UK, kind of thing. And we haven't really got time today to go into this, but so what do we do? You got to watch your debt levels, your gearing, your loan to values. Yeah, that's the critical thing. Number one, as Warren Buffett says, when a tide goes out, find out who's wearing no shorts. What does that mean? It means be aware of your exposure to debt and debt markets. If the banks ever want their money back, can you refinance? And if you take a 10% hit, 20% hit on values, how does that affect your portfolio? And is it time in 25 after rates come down to, hedge for the next 5 years?
Yeah. Okay. No, that's really, really, really good stuff. And just the mere mention of 2008 has me squirming in my seat. We went from, as Laura would know, we went from about 1.6 million equity in our buy-let portfolio to negative equity in about 6 weeks, which was not fun. It definitely wasn't fun. Sam, in terms of just on this then, before we go on to the next slide, anything jumps out at you regarding this whole sort of wealth inequality debate?
Yeah, I did like what Dan said on a number of points actually, and one of them is that the winner's curse. I think landlords and property people have had a really, really good ride up until 2015, and the tables turn at some point, and I think we've been. I mean, up till 2008 was tough if you can get through it, but then I noticed another shift as well in 2015 when George Osborne scrapped Section 24. But ultimately, the wealth inequality is a thing and it needs to be focused on, but what the solutions are for it, I don't know. We are living in a more globalized world. People are talking about moving to Dubai and taking their wealth with them and all that sort of thing. So I'd be lying if I said I had any answers. I think it's an ongoing thought in my mind about what I think everyone just needs to look after themselves and know that if you live in a meritocratic society, the more you put in, the more you get out, and you've got to have the faith in that.
Laura, in terms of Northern Ireland market,
I think they seem to be focusing a lot on the flippers, but talking, about the actual market itself, most people don't want to go in and do a flip, so any of the houses that need any type of work done on them at all, they just sit on the market. Whereas anybody that has a house sitting that has been totally flipped around, people don't mind going in and paying the extra money for that, because they can borrow more than what they actually would be able to have cash to do the work themselves, and B, they don't have the time or the effort at the minute because both people in the household are usually working full time. They've got kids and they don't really want to be walking into a house to actually have to sit and do a lot of renovation work. So to target those people that are improving the quality of the housing stock, I think is a wee bit, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Two more of these. So we'll do these quite quickly because I want to really look at the 2025 and the different factors. Dan's already touched on some of them, but it'd be good just to maybe spend a bit more time on what where the opportunities may be and the key things to think about in 2025. Obviously, a big part of the budget was around affordable housing. Anyone want to comment on that? which I think no one's going to have any complaint about the idea of bringing more affordable homes to the market. There's a massive gap in the market. Um, there are obviously different social groups that need housing and right now maybe can't get housing. Anyone want to comment on the whole affordable housing sector?
It's a tough space in terms of creating new homes, increasing the supply. With interest rates that have been going up, the planning system having 13, I think it was 13 housing ministers in 13 years with the Tories. We've got a chronic supply demand imbalance, and I know that Labour have said that they would like to reform the planning system, but find more planning officers to be able to make decisions. I don't know how many thousand or something they wanted to employ, as if these planning officers that are trained up, that are just sitting at home and have got nothing else better to do, that decided that they want work. It's been really, really, really tough over the last 18 months. I've seen a lot of developers struggle to get rid of their units to make any profit. And some of them, it's left them so battered and bruised that they've just decided to take a break from things for a little while and focus on their kind of health and well-being and family. So it's the affordable housing crisis, I think, is only going to get slightly worse, especially now with all these landlord reform acts, etc. So yeah, it was looking good for a time. I think things like Help to Buy and those sorts of stimulation in the market helped, and that was working for a time. But I think by the time COVID's hit and a bunch of other stuff with the chronic inflation that we had, things are looking pretty grim, I think, on increasing the housing supply and solving that affordable housing crisis at the moment.
Yeah, I think too often it's just headlines. So Labour's big headline: 1 million new homes in the next decade, and a big percentage of them needing to come from affordable housing. It's great as a headline, but delivering it, Sam, as you said, is very, very difficult. So, Laura, within Northern Ireland, affordable housing market, are you familiar with that space over here?
Not really. I mean, Northern Ireland is pretty much a different market. It's much more affordable to start off with than what it would be in the south of England. So there generally isn't as much need for affordable housing as what there would be for social housing. But even in the last number of years, I think it's twice housing, our capacity for building in Belfast at the moment. They're not taking on any more projects because they have so many on the go. There's a lot of social housing being built at the minute in Belfast. Maybe not enough still, but in terms of the previous years, there's definitely been a ramp up in it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just jump on to this next one then. We'll do this very, very quickly. Obviously, there was a bit of focus on the budget regarding sort of the whole green energy thing. Anyone got a particular comment they want to make on this? We can do it just nice and briefly before we move on to the next bits.
I mean, it kind of crosses over just very briefly and from what I was saying before, where the affordable housing crisis is only probably going to get worse if even though they want to build another million new homes and build on the grey belt and all that sort of stuff. There's this, so you've got different taxes when you go through planning. You've got the SIL, community infrastructure levy, then you've got the S106, and now you've got the net biodiversity gained as well. So that's another, you need credits for all that. You need to add so much green space. It's just one thing after another, and it's suffocating developers. I think something like pre-2008, can't remember the exact number, but I think it was like 10,000 SME property developers existed compared to the 3,000 or so now. There's a good reason for that. I just think that as much as I want to save the planet and be green and healthy and all that sort of stuff, I think we might need to rethink it slightly.
Yeah, I think on the last two slides, it really highlights the fact that viability of developments right now are at the lowest point. Construction prices are at the highest, and they're going to go further still into the winner's curse kind of thing. And trying to deliver these things, like my PBSA scheme, I need 6% yield. We're at 6.75. Until interest rates come down considerably and construction costs flatten out, that's unviable. So it's no big deal. We'll just sit on it. But in terms of green energy for care homeowners, business owners trying to sell, one of their sellability assets or aspects is the fact if they've invested heavily and they've got biomass, they've got solar panels, they've got batteries, they've got air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, and in a gas backup system. If they're just relying on gas and whatnot and think they're going to optimize their values, then a lot of them's just got the old school, they've got their head in the sand. Like what one group we came across, 7 care homes, they're like dinosaurs. One was still getting oil delivered for fuel. And the residential sectors are different. You kind of be forward thinking here. Whereas, at some point you may want to hold forever, you may want an exit. So if you're exiting it down the road, you've got to think, who are you exiting to? And the smart money is going to, eco-friendly kind of, developments. And if you are that one, or you're raising your head, when the air comes thinner, then they'll overpay for your properties. So if you're developing, you really need to build this into any scheme going forward. Currently going forward, a green aspect of the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we need to pivot to 2025 before we wrap up. But just some comments that have come in. I'll go through these quickly, and if any panelists want to jump in sort of quickly on something great. Why do we need to focus on wealth inequality? Surely we and the government should be focusing on tackling poverty, which is the real issue, rather than just hiding the underlying problem. I think that's a good point. Easy option is take money off the rich, but what about looking at the real factors in poverty? Interesting discussion point. Another one is, if wealthy people are leaving the UK to avoid the tax hikes, are their properties at least been made available for sale or rental to ease the shortage? Again, I would imagine more than likely they're keeping them and renting them out, I would imagine. But an interesting point. The Labour Party says that the deep right to buy discounts on council homes need to be reduced to avoid leaking equity from the sector, which I agree with, so that replacement social housing can be purchased. The Lib Dems say that won't work, and that we need to actually build more homes to increase the total stock, which also holds some weight, which is correct. So we'll if anyone wants to comment on that one quickly. Not asking you who you vote for, but in terms of those two, are Labour more correct than the Lib Dems, or?
I think increasing the supply is the only real needle mover on this issue.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay, let's pivot. Thank you for the comments, by the way, from the ones that commented in. So let's pivot to a quick look on into 2025 and the old crystal ball. My old friend John Corey, who I know Dan Taylor knows quite well, he used to be very irritated when I put the old crystal ball up on the screen with our joint webinars. But I think they're cool. I think they're a good way to focus the mind on what may be coming down the line. So we'll Dan, we'll go with you first, because I know you love kind of looking at future and trying to get ahead of trends. That's since I've ever met you, you're always looking at what are the trends. How can you position yourself ahead of the trends? So in terms of 2025, what are you thinking about in terms of property?
For me, you're looking forward. You need to look back. What happened in the past always repeats. And so, if you study history, economics history, or history in general, you'll see trends, patterns. And we should always model, these kind of patterns and project forward. So 2025 for me is a year of preparation. It's a year of getting your portfolio in the right kind of space in terms of leverage, so that if you take a 10-20% hit on the values, you're still okay. So that might mean selling a couple to reduce the debt leverage on the other ones. And then for me, it's to watch interest rates carefully, and hopefully they'll continue to fall down over the next kind of 12 months. And at the right time, where you ever think that right time is, potentially hedging to get past the downturn that inevitably will come over the following years. So, when the downturn happens, nobody knows, but on average, it's 18.5 years. The minimum it's been is 17 years. The maximum it's been is 21 years, over 200 years. The only 2 times it's ever not been straight to pattern is the First and Second World Wars, and directly thereafter got back on average to 18.5 years. So this is not airy-fairy woo-woo stuff. This is factual. And if you're a property investor, you want to grow and protect your wealth, you owe it to yourself to kind of learn and understand these kind of things, so you can at least have an idea of what's coming down the track. Now, for care homeowners who we target, businesses with the underlying real estate, the big massive thing for them just now is if they sell after April 25, they're going to pay more tax. And that's cool. But also another factor is the £2,500 per employee on minimum wage at 37.5 hours, you pay another £2,500. And usually, like the one we're looking at just now, we just signed heads of terms, they have 400 people. But there's this tax strategy. It's a big impact, which creates a big opportunity if you're valuing these things in the right way. Because if their values come down because their overheads have gone up, so their EBITDA has gone down, then there's a big opportunity. If you can fix that problem as well, being the wage increase, and there's a strategy for that, then you bring a lot of value to the table. Yeah. So I think the big takeaway is there's something going to happen, 26, 27, who knows when, but it's around about then. Prepare yourself. 2025 is about preparation to defend against, what you want to do is when the shit hits the fan and the bank manager is phoning somebody up, make sure that's you.
I'm
going to 27 onwards, there's going to be opportunities of buying season, and you'll be able to pick stuff up at pence on the pound. So get to know 3 bankers, not just one. Get to know insolvency practitioners, and prepare yourself and defend while also attacking.
Yeah, I'm going to rename you Dan Creative Strategies Taylor. That's so. But before we pivot off you, Dan, just one question's come in here, and it's commercial, so I think it's asked you, and then we'll go to Laura and then Sam. Question comes in here. I'm seeing a lot of commercial properties coming on the market from businesses such as Tesco's who are selling and rent back. Is this an indication that there's something about to happen? I think that's really what you're already indicating, what you've just said.
Yeah, absolutely. It's time for the winner's curse. We're in there. It started, and what is the winner's curse? It's the last kind of 18 months of the peak of the cycle. Everything gets accelerated. What's the common indicators? It's prices at crazy values. It's 100% mortgages, 95% mortgages. Remember back in the day we had 110, 120% mortgages, 2005. Well, and then they said that will never happen again, and they put it back down to 65, 70%. Have you seen it creep up over the last few years? The leverage, yeah. So if you're buying something at 95% LTV, plus the new stamp duty, the fees, the whatever, how much you really paying? And if you take a 20% hit on that, then you're 120% over-geared. Yeah. So you really got to kind of watch out about these kind of things. But in terms of commercial property, 2 indicators to look at to know where you are. Number 1 is, what is a lead indicator? So you get lag indicators, lead indicators. Lead indicators are construction companies whose stocks are diving down. Now, stocks are basically projected out at 12 months. They kind of know how much the company's going to be making. So if they're buying less stuff, like one of the big construction companies, if they're buying less stuff or their supplier stock starts to dip, that means they've projected out in 12 months what's going to happen. Yeah. So stocks of construction companies are lead indicators. Also, the 30-year bond. When a 30-year bond goes south, not a good sign.
Okay. Good. Okay, I think Laura, that's how we go to you next. So in terms of 2025 for your sort of your business, Northern Ireland market, what's your key takeaways?
I think 2025 is more or less going to continue in a similar pattern as to what 2024 did. This year has kind of seen the first year to us as to the seasonal market post-COVID, because after COVID, the market was just crazy and an up. Whereas this year, January, February were quieter. The end of October, November have been quiet. We're starting to get really busy again at the moment for everybody looking to get their adverts on before the 2 busiest days of social media, looking at houses on Christmas Day and Boxing Day. So I think 2025 is kind of just going to continue in a similar pattern. As to what happens beyond that, I'm still out on that one.
Yeah, you mentioned there the two busiest days. I'm
Yeah,
not even sure if I even knew that before. So you're saying the two busiest days to look at property are Christmas Day and Boxing Day?
yeah. Christmas Day and Boxing Day. Our biggest property portal here is Property Pal, and that is their two busiest days. So they get the most hits on Christmas Day and Boxing Day.
I didn't even know that. There, even I've
Yeah.
learned today. There you are. Excellent.
So yeah,
Okay.
we've got a lot of photographs all coming in before the Christmas trees get up to get those marked alive. And even the first week of January is pretty much booked up now with new houses ready to go on. So
Cool, cool. Okay, fantastic. Sam, then, in terms of your space, then maybe in the lending as well as just wearing your developer hat and around the networking events, what's the 2025? What's in store for property professionals?
So my view is slightly different to Dan's in that I think that there might be a little bit of an uptick in the grand scheme of things, even though that's Labour have done a good job by raising taxes to try and suppress that. I think interest rates will start to come down ever so slightly, which will offset some of the stranglehold that taxes will have on the economy and let funds flow. And I see across the pond in America where Donald Trump's taken going to be the president for the next 4 years, I see that they will have some tax reduction measures which will spark their economy, and then the rest of the world tends to benefit from that. Whether I mean, they're doing a whole America First push as well, so whether they start doing stuff more locally or not, I don't know exactly. But in '92, they were saying survive till '95. So looking at history, similar to what Dan said, I see the same thing happening here in 2002, post COVID, when interest rates started going up, inflation started going up, and we had this. Sorry, did I say 2021? Beg your pardon. In I see it till 2025. We've got to survive till then. Next year will be a year of getting ready for a little bit of a spurt in the economy, hopefully by 2026, 27. And then it'll come crashing back down again because we do have these boom bust cycles. And yes, if you look through history, boom bust is a thing, and you've got to be able to understand that these cycles are just part and parcel of everyday life. I believed Gordon Brown when he said the days of boom and bust were over, and that was a big mistake. I shouldn't have believed that, and I should have been ready for the next bust when it came round. And I didn't capitalize on it, but I rode the wave between 2001 and 2008. So just knowing these cycles exist, and I think that next year will be a better year than we've had over the last 18 months, because with all the uncertainty around interest rates rising constantly, especially for property people, I think we're going to have a little bit more stability, and therefore there's going to be, wherever the opportunities are, whether it be in social housing, whether it be on buy to sell, or buy and hold, commercial property or residential. Next year is a good time to find out where those opportunities are and go for it.
Brilliant. Okay. I'm laughing to myself here that you actually said you believed a politician. I was like, okay, fair enough.
Honestly, it was
There's a,
literally it's the
yeah.
worst thing. Yeah, you know what? The funny thing is, Tony Blair. I talked about 1997 earlier. And the Tony Blair went to the same school that I grew up that I went to when I grew up in Durham, and so everybody there was, especially around 97, he was like some sort of guru idol that everybody thought was going to change the world, and I was, just over 10 years old at the time. So yeah, so his administration with Gordon Brown there, and they were doing no wrong as well up until that point when he said the days and like, yeah, but that was that stayed in my mind and scarred me for life, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine. Although I'm laughing to myself here. Laura and I could probably do another whole podcast on politics in Northern Ireland and the pros and cons of
Days.
giving power to local politicians. But that's definitely, Laura, maybe a conversation for another day.
yeah, our planning system has felt the repercussions of that one.
Massive, massive. There's things they need to improve. But okay, well, look, I'm going to give each of you like a 30-second wrap up. I have just a couple of slides to finish off. I think it's been really beneficial. I think there's been a lot of covered there, a lot of really good sort of tips and ideas and thoughts, and always like a bit of controversy when one panelist says, "I don't quite agree with other panelists." So that's good. I like that. I'm actually thinking to myself, we actually got away to near the end without mentioning Mr. Trump, and I'm just thinking, I would love to get John Corey on maybe the December one to discuss the impact that Trump might have on just the world economy, as well as the whole you mentioned there, Sam, about the changing in certain economic triggers that he's likely to bring in and the impact that will have right throughout the world. And obviously, love him or hate him as an individual, in terms of his sort of property experience. I've actually been in the room twice with him years ago talking about property, and he's a fascinating character and certainly understands property. So that will be an interesting one. So yeah, so if you want to see John Corey and me go head to head on December, drop me a line and I'll try and make it happen. I'll try and make it happen. Right, let's wrap up here then. For those that are interested and who would like potentially to have a conversation with me, then what you can do is you can reach out to me. We've got a couple of funding packs, as we call them. If you're a developer, if you're a landlord, and you're looking to secure funding, debt, second charge, first charge, equity, give us a shout and we'll be happily have a chat with you about your project. If you want to even just, if you have a development project particularly, or want commercial lending or a bridge, you can go on to our propfunders.com/start here, and you can actually put the details in. One of our affiliates, Brickflow, at a press of a button, you'll be able to access over 100 specialist property lenders and see whether or not there is options for what you're trying to do at sort of favorable rates and terms. So that facility is there on our website. And as I say, if you want to reach out to me directly, along the bottom there, calendly.com, david.propfunders/free-30 minutes-property-consultation. You can take a quick screen grab of that and you can get a 30-minute call with me totally free of charge. We'll have a discussion about your project or any other way that we can help you along your property journey. And so that is really brings us to the end. The next one is Wednesday, the 18th of December. I'm now going to make it a mission to try and get John Corey on, if he's in good health and able to do it. So we will do our best, and that will be definitely an interesting webinar for sure. So I'll just come off screen actually and let each one just have a last 30 seconds before we wrap up. So I think we started, didn't we go Laura, Sam, and Dan at the start? So we'll go Dan, Sam, and Laura. Just a 30-second wrap up on anything you want to talk about. You have 30 seconds, is yours.
Somebody asked a question in the chat. What's the best commercial property strategy to focus on just now? I think the strategy is not as important as, number one, you have to know what you're doing. So whatever strategy you know like the back of your hand, stick to that one, because there's always opportunity in each strategy. Offices is in turmoil. It's not at the bottom. Retail is a great opportunity. Buying businesses is massive. Absolutely huge just now. There's going to be 100 trillion wealth transfer over the next decade. People selling businesses. That's just a whole webinar in itself. So let's not go there. But for me, what Sam said, boom, 100%. The next 2 years is going to see the biggest boom you've ever seen. Trump's going to print the presses. He's going to deregulate. He's going to be doing all the things necessary to get the peak of the winner's curse, as we call it. And then we're going to go for the other thing. And it's nothing Trump can do about that. It's boom and bust. There has to be a bust following a boom. Trump's going to it's a perfect setup for what's about to happen. Trump coming in, and who doesn't love his dance? Has nobody seen his movie? It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So he set up the whole thing, teed it up. It's going to boom in the next 2 years. It's going to go crazy, over leverage. Just prepare yourself. Don't go in too far. Don't be the guy that's not wearing any pants when the water goes out. So for me, it's do deals, but increase the equity in deals now. This is a time for equity in deals, because what's going to happen? Construction prices will go up. Yeah. Deals will take longer to deliver, guaranteed. I'll put money on that. So what's the result of that? When you're at the closing table, the bridge fund, the development finance, whatever it may be, they're going to help you. They're going to reduce the amount of money, as David talked about at the beginning of this webinar. So take more equity to the table. Turn the tables on them and get 40% equity. Why? Because then you can then pick what development finance you want at what terms, because they all want to court you. Yeah. So the gig is get more equity than you need, So you've got some in reserves as well. And careful what you're doing. Expect a 20%, off the top. Because if you're developing now, when you're delivering at the peak of the thing, potentially over the other side. So for me, it's bring more equity to each and every deal, and open that up, become partners. And David's got the perfect platform to do that with an equity raise platform.
Fantastic. Tell you what, you got a lot in there for 30 seconds, Dan, to be fair. That was impressive. That was impressive. No, there were some really, really, really good tips. Thank you for that. Sam.
So I do think commercial property has probably the best gains to be had. I think residential is really, really tough, whether you're doing development or asset management. I think if you know how to operate the commercial space and learn up on that pretty quickly, get ready for some really big gains next year. And then just on kind of the difficulties of I've seen a lot of people complaining wanting to go to Dubai and all this sort of stuff. And the Renters Reform Act. As Dan was saying right at the beginning, this all creates opportunity. And people just learn to do things in a slightly different way. You just have to work that out. I mean, and from what what I'm looking out for, because I have a property portfolio, if they start bringing rent controls or the right to buy a private landlord's house, probably that might tip me over the edge. But until there's talk of that or any legislation towards those sorts of things, I think property is still a fantastic asset class for the next 15, 20 years.
Sounds good. Laura, you can have the big wrap up.
I think one of my takeaways from from actually last week is if you are going to invest in a residential property, you are not buying it to live in it, so you don't have to get the feel. I was showing a house and there was a 11% yield in it. Really, really good investment, and a number of investors said that they didn't get the feel for the property, but the numbers worked really, really well. So I think one of my main takeaways from this week is just you don't need a feel for the property if you're not going to be living in it yourself. So the deal's the deal.
Yeah, that's actually very good. Numbers rather than feelings. That's hard to beat. That's a good principle in property. Numbers rather than feelings. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I want to thank Laura. I want to thank Sam. I want to thank Dan for your time. Time is precious, so we really do appreciate you've taken it an hour out of your life, or an hour and 10 minutes it is sort of now, just to be with us. Really, really appreciate that. Massive thanks from me. And obviously we'll be staying in touch individually as we go along, and maybe we'll do this again maybe at the next budget. We'll see. But absolute pleasure. Thanks very much everyone for joining us. A really good number on live, and obviously the recording will go out on YouTube channel quite soon. I did mention a couple of things I was going to put in the chat. What I'll do is I'll send an email out with the recording link, and we'll give you the link to the blog. It's also on our website, which you can get, and I'll also drop the link then for a conversation with me. So listen, thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday and the rest of the weekend, and wish every success in your property journey.
Great, thanks for having us.
Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.